Hello, it is December 7, 2023. This topic today is the environment and zero emissions. Um, what I'd like to talk about is, there's a lot of talk. I mean, from my angle, my perspective, all over the world, but at least in Canada here, there's this constant talk of zero emissions, the environment, pollution. We're dealing with on the consumer end of it. We're dealing with all these things like no plastic bags. It can go on and on and on. I don't want to waste your time going into it, but as we know, we have to be concerned, or the government is telling us to be is concerned. Sorry, the government is telling us there's a concern and there's requirements and there's needs, and it's all being addressed and it's going to affect everybody in some way. So, I'd like to talk about some of the issues that I see, um, just some things that I notice about this discussion. I'm just going to go back a little bit, and I remember this is related to consumerism. On my mother's side, my mother was born in Germany, and her grandparents were born, or her parents were born in Germany, who are my grandparents, and they went through World War II, and after post World War II, they came to Canada as European immigrants. And one thing I picked up, I guess culturally from them, or behavior, I don't know what to say, but uh, one thing I did notice about my grandparents, my mother as well, and obviously I think I have a little bit of it too, but what I got from them is that they didn't waste anything. There was very little waste. Um, the culture um, was to repair stuff, to fix stuff. I think part of it was back in the day, things were made more durable for the most part. And in talking about machinery, like even relating to say cars or just machinery in general, or even could be kitchen items like pots and pans and stuff like that. Everything was made out of steel. It was made strong, and it was repairable. It had nuts and bolts on everything. If something was loose, you can tighten it, and if it broke, you would replace a handle and drill a hole and put it back in with nuts and bolts. There wasn't this mass consumption and waste that I see in this my generation, and obviously generations before. I think it was what, the 50s, where plastic came in or something like that, and there's efficiencies and all kinds of good things. I'm not here to bash plastic or oil-based products in that sense. I'm just trying to get to the point of waste. What about these kinds of things? You go to the dollar store, and there's all these toys and just pure garbage. Like, some of the stuff is not even worth the material. Like, it's not even worth the cost. It's just garbage, and it breaks. And we a lot of it goes to waste. There's things like birthday parties or events where you buy a whole bunch of stuff and you put it on the table. Let's say a birthday party, you buy all these little trinkets and plastic toys and stuff, and a lot of it just ends up in the garbage and in a toxic waste. Now, yes, I don't want to what's the word, take the fun away from children, but I'm getting to the point of, like, there's this frivolous, like, just waste. What about stuff like that? What if that was, you can't make it illegal. I don't want to be radical about this, but it's that kind of, I guess, naivety, being naive in that aspect. I see a lot of waste. I see the same thing with disposable products. I see the same thing with, like, let's talk about the automobile industry. It's something I'm a little bit familiar with. I've always been interested in cars, and one thing I do notice, I could say about the automotive industry and how it reflects the economy, is because that industry uses a lot of different materials and different industries within the industry to manufacture a car, or that kind of production. There's all kinds of materials: glass, steel, computers, rubber, all these different elements that go into to manufacturing an automobile, and it's obviously a lot of energy is being used to manufacture, to use them, and at the same time also export, import or export them from countries of origin where they're manufactured. So let's go into cars that are not made here and shipped over. Um, some of these vehicles, these import cars, are very expensive, the high end ones. And the low end ones are somewhat disposable. I won't mention any names, but some of them are they last 5, 6, 7 years and they're just junk. They end up being recycled. Um, like, why isn't it mandated that a car needs to last 10 years at least? And if you're not sending a car that will last 10 years, then you got to be penalized in some form, or just not being sold. There's so many inferior products out there that's just ridiculous. And I know it's a thing of price. It's all driven by price, and that's the free capital system. And I understand that. Is it the free capital system? What is the word for that? Um, so I'm thinking of Milton Friedman when I think of everything's based on price. Um, so a lot of it is just waste, and it's terrible. I think it's terrible for the environment. If you're manufacturing, like if you make a car that's is, I won't say purposely defective, but if it has a known issue and you continue making it, like that's just not acceptable. Like, the customer, the person with the car is going to have to take that into a shop, and is going to have to repair it, and that part has to be made and sent over, and the mechanic is going to spend, I mean, just think of all the energy being involved in repairing a car that's just poorly made. That is such a waste. And I know it's part of the system. It's planned obsolescence. It's planned. It keeps the economy going when you have to repair automobiles. But what about that? What about, I know there's okay, for example, the government implements things like emissions. So cars, burn so much fuel, or so much comes out of the exhaust, and it's measured, blah blah blah. Okay, fine, great, but people are modifying that. They're allowed to modify that, or it's not being enforced. I mean, maybe it is being enforced, but I mean, I don't have to take my car in the province of Ontario anymore. I don't have to get it checked. I think it should be checked every 2 years. Maybe not at my cost, but it should be. I think all cars should be inspected at least once a year, or every 2 years, right? You should drive into a shop, mechanics, somebody approved should be looking through this car, and not be paid off to let things slip by. That might be something to help with the exhaust and that kind of thing. It's just things like that, that I know it infringes on people's freedoms, and that's an issue. I understand that, but another thing what I want to get at is just the sheer waste. Products that are being sold that are garbage. Let me give you an example. You can buy, let's say, a dustpan. You can buy a steel dustpan for about, I don't know, maybe $10, $15, maybe 20. You could maybe find a used one for $5 or $6 at a thrift store, and if you're not into that, then you can buy a new one for maybe $20. Or you can go to a dollar store and buy one for probably less than $4, and a brush or a broom, one of those hand brooms. So that plastic one you buy at the dollar store that costs you $4 probably manufactured across the sea somewhere. I can almost guarantee that. That product will, you step on that thing once, it's cracked, it's done, it's garbage, into the dump it goes. So here's something that's manufactured, let's say in Asia, it's shipped on a boat. I don't think they'd be flying that thing in. It's shipped on a boat all the way to North America, and then it goes probably from a boat to a train, or a train to a truck, or it ends up on a truck somehow and being delivered to that dollar store, and then you drive to the dollar store, or get to the dollar store somehow, and you buy the product and you bring it home. So yeah, okay, you get it for $4 as opposed to $15, and some people can't afford a $12, $15 dustpan. I understand, but if you look at it, that $15 steel dustpan might last you a lifetime. It might, if it's used properly, it might last 2, 3, 4 generations. Whereas this plastic one, how many of those are you going to buy? Now, to me, that's waste. That's unnecessary. That's not. Now, is the government going to regulate and say no, you can't make plastic dustpans? No, but maybe they should. Um, we used to make so much stuff here. Maybe the requirement is to, X number of things have to be manufactured locally. Now, something like a dustpan. Why am I buying a dustpan that's made in China? Why can't I buy a dustpan that's made in Hamilton, Ontario, or Chicago, Illinois? Why am I not buying a local made one? Now you're going to get into a whole different, we're talking about unions, we're talking about prices and countries and labor costs and all that. Fine, whatever. I know the reason and the way it is, but why isn't there an implemented sort of thing that says, you're in North America and 50% of the things you buy should be made locally, or at least in this country, or if not, North America, Canada, Mexico, whatever. What about things like that? Would that help the environment? So maybe I made a point there. What about things like that? What about now? That's something we could all do independently and say, look, I'm going to insist on buying something local, but that's really, really hard because there's not a lot of it out there. Um, um, that's one thing there. What about the right to repair? How about things that are manufactured should be repairable? Look at phones. I mean, you can't even take the battery out of these phones. I mean, yeah, okay, there's the odd person that has the tools and the ability to do it, but I'm not talking about specialists. I'm talking or nerds and geeks. I'm talking about the average person I'm pretty technical, but I don't have the ability to open up my phone and replace a battery. I can't be bothered to do that. Um, you know, what about that? There's so many products out there. They're not repairable. I mean, I've seen, for example, a remote control toy, a remote RC control car for my kids, and you couldn't even open the thing up. It was all sealed up, and if you were to open it up, you'd have to break it to get inside of it. And okay, maybe I could re-glue it and all that, but it's just stuff like that um, it breaks and it's useless, and that is to me just a tremendous waste. And I can see that everywhere. Why is that not addressed? Why are products like that being sold? What is the reason for that? What good is that? Somebody's making money somewhere. Somebody's paying for cheap labor, and I know it costs less to make that overseas than it is to make here. I understand that, but I'm not here to discuss that. I'm here to discuss why do we do this. That is an issue to me. You want to talk about zero emissions or polluting less? Well, think of all the pollution involved in shipping and delivering crappy products that are just there, And yes, I myself, I can't afford to buy everything that's repairable. I mean, it's just this a lot of it's just not there. I mean, I've seen a lot of even not cutlery but cooking items that are like spot welded together, um, infused together, and unless you have some laser spot welder or whatever they use, electric spot welder, you can't repair these things. You have to throw them out. Um, that is to me is a lot of it is just the manufacturing of products right now that I see is an issue for me. That I think if you want to accomplish zero emission or whatever that is, then there's the hypocrisy. I just see so much stuff that just doesn't make sense, and yet we're trying to achieve. I mean, it's quality of products that I debate. I would debate that and say, well, why are we selling these things? Why are we making these things here to keep the local people, the local what do you call it? Local label that I even can't talk. The local labor market. Think of all the jobs that would provide. But I know it costs more and it's cheaper to do in China. Well, these governments that are pushing for these agendas, then they're the ones that make the rules. So what about that? You know, um, so those are the main things I wanted to talk about. And the other one is like e-waste, all that electronic stuff. I mean, I mentioned the remote control cars and phones. There's so much garbage out there, useless things that are just thrown in the market, like this, items and gadgets that some people buy and use. And you look at a car, and like you have your cell phone, and then the car itself has some GPS system and some computer system that um, is in there, and then you use your phone to override, or some people don't even use their phone at all, or just use their phone and not the device in the car, and then that those standards change, and then it becomes obsolete, or not continued, or discontinued, excuse me. um, and you got to buy another item to make that work. It's that kind of thinking where it's like, let me go one more topic here. This one would be involving cars again. Could you imagine that the government would implement and say to each manufacturer, you want to make a car, you want to sell a car here, this is it, you got to make one car. Okay. Like, could you imagine this happened 50 years ago? Could you imagine it was like 1969, 1970, whatever, and the government said, okay, Ford, Chrysler, GM, the big three, you are going to we're going to insist for you to make a car here. You're going to make at least one car. You're going to make it a four-cylinder car, and you're going to make it so that it stays the same for 10 years. You cannot change that car. It has to be the same car, and all the parts have to fit. And you can evolve the parts, but they all have to fit. So if you want to change the headlights on that car, down the line you come with new technology that's more efficient, maybe it's better, maybe it's more cost effective, it may be better for the environment, great, you can use it. But it has to fit, it has to be the same shape, size, and form. Could you imagine cars like that? Can you imagine this cost savings that would be for the consumer? That you can have a car that's 10 years old, and you could use intermittent, like you could just, it's almost like an endless amount of parts. And then the manufacturer could focus on making this vehicle better and better every time, and implement a standard on it. Say this car has to last 20 years. Let's say 20 years in this case. How efficient would that system be? But no, that would be considered communism, or that would be considered, I don't know what that would be called. But that is possible, at least as a standard. Now, I mean, I'm not saying every car has to be, it'd be nice if every car was like that, but I know people want their choice, people want their, they want to have their personality, or their car represents them in some form, or it's a freedom thing, whatever. I'm not going there, but I'm saying, like, let's say you got to implement one car like that for the practical minded person that can't be bothered about image, or they just want a car that works, that's as cheap as possible, and as high quality as possible, and reliable as possible. Now we have Toyota for that, but could you imagine the government said that, okay, we're going to make four-cylinder car. Can you imagine what the market would be like now in North America? We'd probably have more North American cars on the road, or more four-cylinder cars, which the Americans cannot make for the life of them, or they refuse to make a decent four-cylinder car that would compete with a Toyota. But anyways, that's a different topic. But what about the quality, right? What if that was implemented? What would happen? How would it be? So it's that kind of thinking that it may sound radical, but it's almost like that's the way around this in some way, or at least it will help. But I know it's like a leak. You make a rule, you implement something, and somewhere else something's going to leak out somewhere else. It's like bad plumbing. And right now they want to go everything electric, or it looks that way. Where are you going to generate the energy for the electricity? What do you have to burn, or what form of heat do you need to use to create the electricity? So that's a big issue. So that's my rant for today about the environment. I don't know if I went off topic with that, but I just wanted to cover a few things, and sort of, if you remember anything I said, I think if you got to look at the waste that we do, unnecessary waste, crappy products, subpar products, and just unnecessary repair and cost, and products that are just like disposable. You telling me they can't develop a plastic that dissolves, or is, what do you call it, biodegradable? What you can give us plastic bags, if it, or implement something like that. Make it biodegradable if it's in cases of like grocery bags, or takeout containers and stuff like that. Make it mandated. Say, look, it's got to be disposable, right? Not disposable. It has to decompose somehow. So isn't that what paper does? Isn't that what cardboard kind of is? Or what if they can make some kind of synthetic product that dissolves, right? What about that? Hmm. So there's so many just things that just it, it it's crazy. So anyways, have a good day. If you have any opinions or anything you'd like to say regarding, please let me know. Have a great day. Bye bye.